Alrighty. Good morning, everybody. Okay, so we don't have a whole lot of time. Um, so give me a second. Now, just a reminder, good morning, everybody. I do have a broken hand, so I am having to control everything with my opposite hand, which is obviously not my dominant hand. So it will be a little difficult to draw structures. It will be a little difficult to maneuver things, but we will get through it. Now, with that said, Um, I want to go ahead and start taking a look at some of our instruments here. Now, just give me 1 minute because I want to pull up something on my phone. So today, what we really need to decide, and the market's opening in three, two, one, opening now. What we need to figure out today is the market going to be heading towards the 20 month, or are we going to be seeing it head towards the 5 mile. Now the 5 mile is currently at the 655.50, so it's actually completely within range to be struck. Now, with this being a head and shoulders here on the 5 minute time frame, this is a very, very good short position. And in fact, I will be taking the short here. So give me just a second because I'm trying to kind of maneuver with a broken hand. So with the short position, we are targeting the 655.98. May not seem like a whole lot of room right now, but that's currently what we are targeting. Now, there is quite a bit of room downward today. I'm going to try to draw this here. Again, just a reminder, my dominant hand is broken right now, so all the structures and everything are going to look very, very wonky because I'm having to maneuver things with my opposite hand. So from this short position, again, we're simply just looking for the 655, the exact level, 655.98. We're going to be looking a little deeper than that. Um, with this head and shoulders here, we actually have plenty of room downward. We have the 5 mile at the 655.50, which means that truthfully, we should be expecting both the lower bounds and the upper bounds of the 5 mile today. So the lower bounds of the 5 mile is going to be roughly around that point. And I'm going to mark this with red, okay, because that should truthfully be the bottom expectation if we're going to be seeing the full 5 mile test. Upside should be closer to the 5 or the 657. So we will mark that as the upper bounds of the 5 mile. That's what we're really looking at ending with today. Now, on the 5 minute time frame here, I am looking for this inverse cup right here to be invalidated. Pulling down to that 655.60 range should do that. So with that invalidation, that should target us down towards the lower bounds of the 5 mile. Sorry, it is very difficult to maneuver with the opposite hand. And so we should truthfully be expecting a lot closer to that 653.61 range. Especially with this inverse cup here on the 1 minute time frame being invalidated, or I mean this bullish cup. Sorry, it's very hard for me to draw. This bullish cup has been invalidated, and we can see that with the handle essentially breaking below the actual cup structure. So we do have some downside building. That is something that is good. I have not had a chance to really look at chat yet. Good morning, everybody. Thank you all for joining. I do apologize if I sound tired and everything. I am slightly on a painkiller. It's in my hand. So, okay, we're looking for this head and shoulders here to start forming. So, very likely, majority of the day, and with this bottom Bollinger here, you should be out of the majority of your 0 DTE short positions here. It should be the um, 20 mile in the 5 minute time frame. So give that little bit of reprieve here, but we should be expecting this right shoulder to build. So that will really give us that 5 mile test, both to the downside and upside. So we will be looking for that right shoulder to build, and from that right shoulder, we'll be looking for further downside. Now, the volatility today, I do want to set this to the 5 minute time frame. Is very elevated. We did see it pull down towards the 113-ish yesterday. So it is slightly elevated here. With the 5 minute time frame, we do see the upper Bollinger being pushed here, which can lead to a little bit of a reprieve. So we will be looking for that. That potentially can be giving us the right shoulder on that head and shoulders. See that the treasury yields are slightly elevated today. So some bearish signals coming through here. All right, let me go ahead and take a look at chat for a second. Morning, everybody. Thanks for joining. Okay, so a couple other things that I want to look at is I want to look at oil, which of course is just absolutely going crazy right now. Thank you. Oil's going absolutely crazy right now, of course. Today's the deadline for the Iranian side. Semiconductors pushing upward. So I will be expecting a little bit of a reprieve there. Do have a little bit of a cup building here on semiconductors, so we do have to watch out for that. From this cup, should be expecting bearish structure at the top. Do form a handle downside, and I do apologize, this looks terrible. Trying my best to draw it. So that's what we will be expecting as semiconductors. Semiconductors being pushed up here actually creates a really nice short position. This short position does go sort of hand in hand with what we're expecting out of the SPY, building that right shoulder, pushing downward. Now I do want to look at QQQ here. QQQ, we are seeing a bit of the same thing here. Do want to look at the 1 minute time frame. 1 minute time frame, we can be building potentially a little bit of an inverse shoulders here. So we do have to be careful of that. Sorry, it's very hard to navigate everything with my opposite hand. SPY, still much of the same here. Still just looking for this right shoulder to continue. I want to look at NVIDIA, look at Microsoft. So there's that head and shoulders. that was present on SPY, QQQ, and everything. So Microsoft is showing us that it does want further downside today. NVIDIA, if we see a rejection fairly soon here, then this can lead into an inverse cup and handle, which would be a bearish structure. But with this topping at the 177.48, do have to look at that potentially NVIDIA can be trying to create a cup to the upside. So we will be watching for that as well. QQQ seeing a little bit of a breakdown here, so that's exactly what we're looking for. Semiconductors seeing a bit of a breakdown. That's what we're looking for. Same with SPY. Now with SPY here, this inverse cup actually works very well in tandem with the lower bounds of the 5 mile. So again, just another signal kind of telling us that we really should be expecting this downside here. This inverse cup fills to the downside. We should be seeing that 653.91. So I will go ahead and mark that. Semiconductors are telling us that we have room all the way to the 341 right now, or 341.61. So that's, roughly a whole $3 of downside still. QQQ. If it decides to close that inverse cup, then it will be looking at that 582.97. So roughly $2 downside on QQQ as well. Now within HIG and Liquid, which again are the corporate grade bonds, we are seeing a little bit of selling. And I want to look at Liquid here. Kind of hard to see with that large candle, but sorry, I'm trying to this up a little bit. We are seeing selling, very likely close that inverse cup to the downside. And I do want to look at Bitcoin. And Bitcoin, we are seeing the bearish structure here too. So very likely trying to form a head and shoulders here, the 5-minute time frame. So a lot of signals are telling us that very likely we should be seeing a pretty large rejection to the downside. Semiconductors still have about $2 of range. The downside, SPY still has roughly, we'll just call it $2. Because even at the bottom of the 653.91, we should be expecting bullish structure, which I can get a circle drawn, is expecting, the bull structure to build at the bottom of this inverse cup, or the top, however you want to define it. But that means that we should be seeing a little bit further downside from there to build that bullish structure to create the handle upward. Good morning, everybody, and it's okay, I got you. Even if I am not feeling super good, I still got it. So sorry, I was looking at that. Okay, so NVIDIA, we want to continue seeing breakdown here because again, if this breaks down here, the very large likelihood is it will be seeing all the way back to the 174.80. And the reason why, I can actually maneuver my hand there properly, is that we did not complete this bullish cup. Okay, and because we did not complete this bullish cup, so far it's not valid, meaning that we would have to be pushing up towards that 177.48 range to really validate this cup, start building bear structure at the top of it, go on from there. Q very likely going to be seeing this inverse cup closing. Same with SPY here. That's looking very, very promising. Okay, that's good. I want to look at our volatility. Our volatility is very, very, very high today. It opened at the 115.81 and now it's at the 117.40. So pulling upward. But again, with it being at this upper Bollinger, we do have to be a little concerned that it can pull downward slightly. So that's kind of alluding towards the right shoulder that we're talking about throughout the majority of tech. I do want to see if we are going to aim to close this inverse cup prior to that though. Because if we close it prior to that, then that will show that that reprieve on the VVIX can be for a inverse handle. Um, which would be, alluding to more downside on the day. So, okay, I need to mute my mic just for a few seconds so that I can drink some coffee so that I don't fall asleep on you guys. I will be right back. Yes, that's pretty much exactly what we should be doing is that we have the 20 mile above us. Um, at the exact level, I can't check it right this second. I want to say it's at the uh 657 range. With the 5 mile being at the 655, either we were going to take that 20 mile range or we were going to take the 5 mile range. With us pretty much being within that 5 mile range right now, we should be expecting the upper bounds and the lower bounds of the 5 mile being tested, which that gives us that 657-ish range to the 650. I think I have it marked at the 653.61. So that'll give us that range on the day while building the right shoulder on this larger structure to give us that head and shoulders, pushing us even further downward. So I actually do think that this is sort of alluding to creating another move to the bottom Bollinger on the daily time frame. And that has quite a lot of downside from here. So that's really what I'm sort of expecting, and I'm not expecting that all today. I expect that over the course of some days, but very likely I'm assuming that there's going to be a full ground incursion into Iran. I don't really believe any of the ceasefire talks so far. Nothing from the military side has been showing that that's even taking place. We still see, um, you know, Iran still trying to blow us up and we're still blowing them up. So I don't think that's the grounds for creating, peace. So very likely we're going to be seeing a full Israeli slash USA ground incursion to Iran, very likely today slash tomorrow. Um, Big reason why I do believe that is going to be the case is because we have been targeting their bridges and power plants. Um, One of the primary reasons why you do that is to prevent military logistics. Preventing military logistics is done, specifically to prevent military movements across Iran and to, really just impede movement from heavy armor and things like that. So, um, the likelihood is that very, very, very likely we're going to be having a full ground incursion. Not happy about it. If you all remember, I was actually betting against the war. Um, prior to it even starting, I was wanting to short oil at the time and hope that we wouldn't get the war, but we did, and here we are. So semiconductors here, we do have to be a little careful that this can create a cup and handle. We did push all the way up to the 345.87. So again, this can create the conditions for the completed cup, hitting the handle towards that 20 mile range, and then bouncing to the upside. I'm not really expecting that, but we just have to, um, you know, have it in the back of our minds. NVIDIA, again, we have not completed this cup to the upside. So if SOX is going to see that upside break, then it would also very likely take NVIDIA with it as well. Um, so again, we're watching for that very, very closely. I'm not expecting that to occur, but we do want to watch for that. Okay, so SPY here. And again, if you had any form of 0DT puts, I actually need to sell mine because I am just completely out of it right now. Um, Hold on, just give me 1 second, everybody. You guys are gonna have to remind me during the day to navigate some of my positions because, again, I am on a painkiller right now. So, um, any help would be great. Besides that, we're looking again for the 653.91. You really shouldn't exit the short until we hit that exact level. Once we hit that level, then you're going to be perfectly fine exiting that short position. Um, from that short, we're going to be patient. We're not going to enter calls right away. Um, there will be an opportunity for calls to the upside today, though, but we will give that downside reprieve just a little time to build because we do see that downside throughout, you know, a ton of different symbols. So with that being throughout a ton of different symbols, the likelihood is that they do want, you know, some real downside on the day. Now, I do want to circle back to our volatility here. Volatility is still super elevated, has not been wanting to cool down at all today so far. So, um, that alone could be a signal that potentially we just want to have a major selling day. Okay, so I'm going to circle us back to the SPY. I'm going to set us here just for a minute. I'm going to mute just for a couple seconds here, drink some coffee, wake up a little bit, and I will be right back. Thank you, I appreciate it. I appreciate it a lot. Anyway, I will be right back, but I'm still here, so if anything major happens, I will unmute and be here. All right, I am back. I have a little bit more coffee in me. Okay, so a couple things I want to check really quick before we really do anything else. I want to open up the unusual wells news really quick because again, um, there's a lot going on right now. Wait, Iran has closed all diplomatic and indirect channels of communication with the United States, according to state-run Iran Times. Okay, so that sounds like the peace deals are going great. Um, you kind of know my opinion on that. I'm not expecting the deals to go well at all. 5 minute time frame here, or the 1 minute time frame, excuse me. Just looking at a couple things here. Now, I do want to circle back to NVIDIA. You see on the 1 minute time frame, I am going to try to draw this, but there's this cup here, potentially. If we see all the way back up to the or excuse me, the 656, get the exact level, 656.32. So if we see that do occur, then this will be closing a micro cup to the upside. If we don't see that occur, then this will just be continuing to give us the bear structure to break down. So we will be watching that very, very closely. Now, I do want to take a look at in volatility. We are expecting a slight reprieve in volatility. Let's go to the 5 minute time frame. Starting to see a bit of a taper here at the top. So that can give us some buying conditions here. So be aware of that. I know that many of you are bearish on the day with me as well. Now I do want to take a look again at Q has not fully closed this inverse cup to the downside yet. I can actually circle myself to the cup. Sorry, I'm trying to use my non-dominant hand, navigate these charts and everything. So we should be expecting that downside still. Again, the downside on QQQ um, will be a lot closer to that 582.90, so not very far from that range at all. At the bottom of that, again, we should be expecting a bullish structure to the upside, and that will be alluding to some of that reprieve that we are expecting within the VVIX. So we will be watching that very, very closely today. What was I looking for? NVIDIA, Microsoft. Microsoft still just breaking down on the day. So nothing major to see there yet. NVIDIA continuing to break down, and again, as long as NVIDIA does not complete this I could talk, upper structure, um, essentially closing this yellow gap to the upside. As long as we don't see that, then NVIDIA is within a very bearish structure. This doesn't look like it, but this is liquidity for a head and shoulders. Do apologize for the very, very sloppy drawings, but we do have head and shoulders liquidity here. Okay, so this entire level can be taken out. We will be watching NVIDIA very, very closely for that today because if NVIDIA loses that level, then the entire market's going to be going with it. QQQ very likely to strike our level any second here. SPY likewise as well. Now we did not close this inverse cup to the downside yet, so again, I am fully expecting that cup to close to the downside. I'm expecting it to push slightly lower, and I'm expecting it to build bullish structure to the upside from that. Thank you, thank you. Yeah, good morning. It's just a little hard to navigate, but it's okay. Didn't really expect this to happen with my hands. Okay. Now, I do want to look at my phone really quick. Hold on. Okay, so Iran reports Iran and France reached an agreement to release two French nationals held. Okay, that's important, great for them, but that's not what we're really looking for the market. But every single person that can be saved from this conflict is a very, very great thing. Might be making money, but we don't want people to be dying for that. Okay, our downside on SPY has been hit. Now, again, I am looking for a little bit further downside before we try to take calls to the upside. Now, with the 1 minute time frame here, it is showing that we are hitting our lower bounds of the 5 mile almost to the T. Okay. Now we need to be looking for bullish structure out of here. Okay, and why I say out of here is now that we completed this inverse cup, we're looking for the bullish structure to head back upward, complete the handle, and then travel back downward. So I am going to be looking for a SPY call, and with the middle Bollinger at that 654.73, that does give us quite a bit of room to the upside. So I will be looking at the 655 calls. Again, I'm not taking them quite yet. I want to see some bullish structure building prior to that, but that will be the position that we will be looking for. Okay. Now I do want to delete some of this prior structure that is now irrelevant. Okay, so that's good. We got that on SPY, and now let's go ahead and look at semiconductors. Semiconductors are telling us that we still have roughly a whole $1.60 to the downside. So I will try to put a square on it so that we can actually visualize this. But semiconductors are telling us that, hey, this is room we're very, very likely going to be taking out. So prior to entering calls, we want to ensure that semiconductors are not going to be, um, taking that extra leg downward and really decimating positions. QQQ, we are looking for bullish structure to start building. Same thing with that. With Microsoft here, it is still just on the downtrend, so I'm going to try to give you a clear picture of how far this downtrend is today. So Microsoft did complete this potentially bullish cup, did complete this inverse cup, so it should be trying to build bullish structure to the upside. Excuse me. But if it really wants to aim for blood, then it has that 364 range. So we will be looking for that on Microsoft. If they really want to turn the hose onto the market, they absolutely can. Nvidia, kind of same deal here. We're looking for that 170 if they want to do that type of movement. This bullish cup to the upside is starting to be fully invalidated. We talked about this earlier, how once we start pulling down to this 174.80 range on NVIDIA, this would create an inverse cup and also head and shoulders. So I will try to draw this here. That's what originally this arrow down here was for. Show that inverse cup closing. Okay, so with this inverse cup getting ready to close on NVIDIA, this is also telling us that on QQQ and SPY, that call entry is starting to become a lot more present. So we do want to wait for NVIDIA to truly push that level, which again is literally going to be any second now. Um, Wait for NVIDIA to fully close that cup, and then we could start looking for calls to the upside on SPY. Now these calls, I am targeting the 655 calls because that's where the um, middle Bollinger is at. So another 10 cents here on NVIDIA, and that downside will be closed. So I am going to go ahead and place a limit order for a 655 call. I am putting my orders at 129 per. Okay. So we will see if our entry price hits. I do expect it to hit. There we go. It hit. There goes SPY pulling down and NVIDIA closing that inverse cup. Okay. So from here, with all this downside being seen on the day, everything else, now we need to be targeting the upside from here. Okay. All of our downside structures have been met, or all of our downside targets for the days so far have been met. We have been testing the lower bounds of the 5 mall. We have seen multiple of these inverse cups closing, so we're looking for bullish structure out of this. Now, if you have any short-term call or short-term puts, this is the range to start closing those in. So again, just closing some short-term puts, adding slightly to the calls here. And I'm ready to go. So we should be ready for our move upward. Okay. And for this move upward, again, we are targeting the middle Bollinger, nothing more, nothing less. Sorry, trying to get one more position. There we go. Okay, perfect. Perfect, perfect. Okay. So from here, with these calls, and I do want to show our exact range of what we got them at. We're targeting the middle Bollinger. Trying to delete some of this prior structure showing so it's not annoying. But with these calls, we are targeting the 655.49. Okay, so we have roughly a whole $3.50 of upside. Now, am I worried about this downside push right now? Not at all. I still have puts going, not on the 0DTE, but I do have TQQQ puts from yesterday that I was, you know, highly suggesting taking because there was a lot of downside within the market, even though there was potentially the room to bounce. Um, I want to look at volatility here because I want to see volatility giving us a bit of that reprieve. Okay, so volatility, and by volatility, I mean the VVIX. VVIX is at the 118.95, so we are looking for a reprieve. Pretty much the main signal we're looking for right now is a reprieve within the VVIX. So, um, anything other than that, we're just waiting for. This is going to be our main signal that the calls are going to take to the upside. So we will be waiting for that. Now, again, I am holding these calls. I am very, very set in them. Still have dated puts going. I have exited the entirety of all of my short-term puts. The goal is that we're going to pull up to the 20 mile again today, or even if we're lucky, have another upper Bollinger move where we can set up more puts to the downside and really ride the downside. Because again, I really don't think that there's going to be any form of positive deal taken in Iran over the next 24 hours. Based off of just the language coming out of the region, based off of the language coming from our side, based off of seeing, military strikes still ongoing. There's not a lot of signals that are really telling me that there's going to be a good deal met here. Now, there's a lot of signals that are telling us that there's very, very likely a full ground incursion going to start. We've been taking out bridges, we're getting ready to target power plants. We're targeting the infrastructure to prevent logistics. So you only do that if you want to stop a military from having any movement, any communication, things like that. So yes, I can check the VVIX. Give me 1 second. Um, but yes, I do expect quite a bit more bearishness within the market right now. Um, okay, so let's check the VVIX here. We should be seeing a reprieve very soon. Again, it was all the way at the 118.95. It is pulling down very slightly, so it's at the 118.90. So barely seeing the reprieve so far, but it is showing a slight reprieve. We are looking for it to pull down, a few dollars, so probably closer to the 115, 116 range. So still quite a bit of movement to go before that. I do expect kind of some chop in this range towards the 20 mile. 20 mile currently at the 655.34. Very likely is going to be around that 655, maybe even the 654.90 by the time we actually get to that level. And again, once we get to that level, I will be pretty much instantly exiting the majority of my calls, leaving some runners just in case we start pushing to the upside further than that. But um, basically, that's the scalp I'm looking for. From that, I will look for more puts to the downside as I am bearish on the market overall right now. So that's the thesis. That's what we're looking for. How's everybody's positions going so far today? Everybody should be so far having a great day if we were able to get some of those TQQ positions and whatnot set up yesterday. I know I did not get a chance to stream yesterday. My hand was absolutely just in so much pain I couldn't deal with it. Um, so pretty much at the time the market opened, I just went to the emergency room instead. So, um, yeah. So I do apologize for missing yesterday's stream, but hopefully today's stream is making up for that a little bit. Now, from this current range, we are just pretty much entirely expecting upside. Um, and again, that's just purely for a short-term reprieve. QQQ, we see that our upside is all the way at the 584, so a full $4 upside still on QQQ. Semiconductors. You see that our upside is at the 341.75, so roughly a dollar upside within semiconductors. SPY still roughly about that $2 to $3 upside. So looking very good. What isn't looking very good is that the VVIX is still pulling upwards slightly. So it did drop down to the 118.90 and now it's back up to the 118.97. Again, every single penny that moves upward is very, very, very indicative of continued selling to the downside. So we have to, you know, be aware of that a little bit. Again, we really do want to see volatility pull back slightly to give us that reprieve, allow everybody to enter further short positions and continue from there. Starting to see some of this bullish structure potentially, and let's go to the 1 minute time frame. Just to confirm this, I can actually scroll down. So 1 minute time frame here, it is a little hard to see, to apologize, but there is a small reverse head and shoulders building here, which is exactly what we're looking for at the bottom of this inverse cup. You tell us that we will be heading to the upside to create that handle upward. Handle upward from here, again, is to create bearish liquidity to the downside. So I know that sounds a little confusing at times, but you do have to move upward to move downward. You have to move downward to move upward, just the way the market works. So again, we're still looking for that exit at the 655.21. And with the thesis of today, pretty much I am going to be exiting pretty much every single call on the 0 DTE, that level. Um, Besides maybe one or two runners, I'm really not set on that upside today at all. Um, so we will be really looking at this 20 mile to reposition puts to the downside for further downside today. Um, let's go ahead and take a look at our volatility. It is slowly starting to pull back, so 118. Oh, we just got a very large leg downward, so 118.67. Pulling back just as we're expecting. This is telling us almost verbatim that we should be seeing that 20 mile on the 5 minute time frame. Again, just a reminder that's very, very close to that 655.20-ish range. So that is going to be our upside exit on the calls. Semiconductors still telling us that we have roughly 70 cents up, or 70 cents of upside, excuse me. QQQ telling us that we have roughly $3 of upside. So there is upside to be had here. Um, don't really shake out of these calls right away just because you see a little bit of downside pushing against it. I would not be super, super concerned about that just yet, especially when we just had that major leg downward within the VVIX. That is telling us that dealers are positioning somewhat for that slight upside. So again, we are looking for that upside target to exit our calls. Upside target is at that 655.20, give or take. Good morning, everybody. Sorry, I just keep randomly popping into chat. It's very hard doing this all with one hand, um, especially a non-dominant hand. It's kind of polarizing how different the world is when your non-dominant hand is taken from you, or your dominant hand is taken from you. It's just kind of crazy at times. Um, Still seeing the structure out of SPY here. With the 1 minute time frame, we are looking to see a little bit of a bullish cup and handle forming. So we will be looking for that to fully flesh out to further solidify our upside here. What else do I want to look at? I want to look at Nvidia again because Nvidia should be giving us that upside bounce here. Did see the cup closed, so we should be seeing a little bit of this upside throughout many different symbols. If I could talk today, makes me laugh. I'm terrible at talking. I think it's because I'm just autistic. So every time I feel like I have to apologize, I just want to be like, "Oh, I'm sorry, I'm autistic." Makes me laugh. Anyway, with that said, seeing our SPY upside here, again, we are looking for that 655. All of my calls are very, very green, so I want them to be more green, and we will take profit. Should be a very nice trade into a very nice setup to the downside. So, um, that's what we're looking for, or at least that's what I'm looking for. Let me go back to chat. I do apologize, my painkiller is making me feel a little loopy, but just have to contend with Loopy Dave today. But Loopy Dave still got it. It looks like we will get our upside. Should get our call exit. From the call exit, we will be looking for puts. Should be very nice. Should be a great trade. Now, I do want to look at semiconductors just to make sure that they're not trying to push that level ahead of everybody, which they are. So we do have to be a little cautious here, is that with semiconductors pushing their 20 MA on the 5 minute time frame, this can create the conditions where they can start pulling downward. I am expecting roughly a whole 30 cents more within semiconductors, which that does go almost hand in hand with our move on SPY here. So I'm going to open my phone, my hand on my sell button for my calls because I'm very much ready to see this upside push to the 655, close those calls, and wait for the next position. So that's what the plan is. That's what we're going to do. And we're going to money and have fun doing it. So QQQ still telling us we have a full $1.60 to the upside. So really trust this upside here. Don't get shaken out just because you see semiconductors pulling back just a little bit. Again, this upside should be almost certain. Now, I do want to look at VVIX just to really solidify that we are getting our upside. And we pull down to the 117.93. So this should be a very, very, very large signal that we can be seeing that buying reprieve here. If I can click the right buttons. Okay, so that looks great. Looking for that. Target on SPY for the puts after the calls. So with these calls or with these puts on the day that I'm expecting, and actually before that, I do want to make sure we all get our proper exit here. So I do want to walk us through the exit on these calls prior to discussing that, because again, we won't be opening the puts immediately. We will be waiting a little bit today for some further structure to build on the bearish side to really solidify that, yes, we can enter those puts at the, whether it's the 20 MA or we wait for this upper Bollinger to pull downward. Um, we will find a put entry into the day. Now, these puts are going to be targeting very, very deep. Okay, these puts are targeting all the way to the lower Bollinger. So that means that the puts taken on this right shoulder, on this inverse cups handle, should be dated. That's why I'm personally going to be taking a lot of the TQQQ puts. Reason why TQQQ is that out of the SPY, semiconductors, and QQQ, we are seeing the most movement out of QQQ currently. Watch your SPY here. Our level's getting very, very close to hitting. So make sure you're getting very ready to exit those positions once that level hits. Um, but from this rejection, when we actually do sell our calls and get the rejection, um, once we enter those puts, we're targeting all the way to the lower Bollinger. Excuse me, I can't talk. We're targeting all the way to the lower Bollinger on the daily time frame. Okay, so for SPY, that's roughly a whole $20 a downside. For QQQ, semiconductors, everything, that's a ton of downside. So we want to target those QQQ puts roughly about 2 weeks out once we enter those positions today. Now, for the actual 0 DTE, if we're going to be trying to target 0 DTE puts back into the day, we just look for the prior support. So with this hitting the 651.93, we will be looking for an inverse cup to the downside because again, this is a inverse cup. We are looking for a handle on that inverse cup to push us downward. Um, this liquidity would be that liquidity to do so. We just want to make sure we catch the top properly. So I'll be discussing that a lot more, but that's what we should be looking for here is we should be expecting, again, push up to this upper Bollinger on the 5 minute time frame. Still seeing it within SPY, still seeing it within QQQ and everything. So really be patient for that level. It should hit semiconductors. Um, yeah, we're going to see a little bit more of a right shoulder built in here. And this too is also alluding to further puts within the day. 0 TTEs, you just target the low of the day. Um, and simple as that. So I do want to take a look at our volatility here, just to make sure we're not getting anything fishy going on. So volatility still pulling downward. So 117.88, still telling us that we should be seeing our upside target within the SPY. And I do want to look at the 1 minute time frame, very likely trying to form a cup and handle. So 1 minute time frame, we can expect, now that we did push into that upper Bollinger, we can expect this to pull down. I can actually mark the level, pull down towards that 20 mile. And again, this is on the 1 minute time frame. From that 20 mile pull down, we should be fully expecting to close the cup and push that almost 5, or excuse me, the 656 range. Okay, so this is creating the bullish structure to the upside, um, just on that 1 minute time frame, which this upside would create the conditions for that downside. So overall, going to be holding these calls very, very tightly still. Everything about today is still telling me that we will be seeing that upside. We do see a slight bounce upward within the VVIX, but not too much. But again, every single penny of upside within the VVIX is very, very, very indicative. So we do have to watch that closely. But I am expecting this to be basically the 1 minute time frame having a cooldown from the upper Bollinger, cool down towards that 20 mile range. From that 20 mile range, have a bounce towards that 655, 656 range. So that's the expectation here. Um, I just want to look at semiconductors and everything else just to make sure everything is still on the same page. Semiconductors. Would like to see a little bit of a push upward here, as we are starting to pull below the 20 mile range. If we continue to pull below that 20 mile range, that can allude to some selling within SPY. So again, I really do want to see this 655 level hit prior to exiting these calls. I'm going to be very, very stubborn because I like money. VIX slightly pulling upward. Again, every penny it moves upward is concerning. Semiconductors pulling upward slightly, so still just holding for our level here. And I do want to check the 1 minute time frame. We are seeing this up and handle forming, so we should see the formation of the micro cup here. From that micro cup, we should see the breakout to the 656. Should be a very, very profitable all position. And I do want to look at volatility while this is going on, so make sure you guys are watching your SPY so that we don't miss an exit. And a slight tick upward within the VVIX. This can be indicative of selling to the downside, so we do have to be cautious here. But again, I am looking for this cup and handle breakout. If we see this start invalidating, we will just go ahead and cut the calls, take the premium on those positions, and go from there. But so far, many signals are still telling me that we should be seeing that 655 range. Now, I do want to look at Bitcoin, so I do use Bitcoin to determine some equity strength. So we do see a bit of a cup handle forming here, so this is alluding to some of that upside as well. And very quickly, let's look at NVIDIA and Microsoft. Microsoft seeing a little bit of that reprieve. It is telling us it has roughly about 70, 60 more cents to the upside. NVIDIA here does have downside, you know, being prepared to build further, but the upside target is still roughly about a whole 60 cents further. QQQ still telling us that the upside is roughly about $1.60. And SPY still telling us that our upside is essentially right at that 655. So being very, very patient here, waiting for our level. But so far, everything is still alluding to us hitting our range. The only thing that is concerning me is that we are seeing this slight pulling upward within the VVIX. I would like to see this leg downward one more time to really solidify the move to the upside. Um, for that call exit. Looking for the breakout here on SPY. Again, just make sure you're watching your call positions. You should be exiting pretty much right at that 655 range, and if you have any runners, allow the runners to run to the 656 if the market wants to take that room. But don't get overly greedy on these positions, just take the profit that's available. Okay, so we got our level. Go ahead and start cutting some of these calls. Get my calls starting to sell here. beautiful. Okay, awesome. That was a really good position. That was actually a lot of profit for me. Okay. Um, from here, we are now waiting for further structure to build to the downside. Okay. Um, everyone should be doing very, very, very well today. Okay. Um, for the TQQ puts, what I'm looking for, and again, we're literally going to be adding to the positions we've been adding to. So I have been adding to the April 17th and the May 1st 40 puts. So those are the ones I'm wanting to add to. Now, again, with this level being hit on the SPY, I do want to see further bearish structure before we fully start committing to re-entering all those TQQQ puts. Um, again, just to make sure that we're not entering a few dollars potentially early or anything else. Um, if you don't have any, then it is a good time to at least secure one so that you have a position going. And then you can build upon it as the good levels come into play. So, okay, great. That is really great. So we've had two very awesome trades today. Yes, Scott, that's exactly why. So the way that volatility works, and this is something that a lot of people don't tell you, is that everyone thinks that volatility works only in one way. And let me go ahead and just pull up the VVIX here to show this. But with our VVIX, and this works much the same like any volatility instrument, is that when we're above this 92, 98 range, this is telling us that we are in, sorry, I'm trying to get my clicker there. We are in a positive volatility environment. Okay, positive volatility environment. Now, when volatility pulls down, that doesn't mean volatility is defeated. That simply means we move into a negative volatility environment. So it's traded much the same, it's just traded in the opposite direction. So rather than a lot of weight being put into the volatility, hedge side of contracts and everything, you start seeing a lot of the negative volatility being calls to the upside, shorting the volatility instruments, things like that. So volatility leads to both increases in IV in both calls and puts because volatility increasing is increasing both the positive volatility and the negative volatility. Okay. So that's how you should really think about volatility is that if there's a rise in volatility, the rise in both the positive and selling direction open up larger. So again, not rushing any short positions here. We're going to be just super, 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 super patient because I want to see actual bearish structure um, forming here. From that bearish structure, we can set up some quality puts. Yep, exactly. And everything is so strike based. Um, for example, and this is a silly example, but this technically can be um a true example is that you can have a SPACs contract worth $1 million, okay? But if it doesn't hit the strike to the penny at close, or when futures close for those SPACs contracts, then that $1 million contract can be worth $0, okay? Um, that's just kind of the devil in the details of how options work is that they're so strike based that the market is not just trying to price in the movement, but they're trying to price in actually landing on the strike come close. Because if you don't land on that strike come close, that tells you exactly that um, that position is or is not going to be exercised for the money. So um, that's the whole goal of the contract from the buyer side is that you do want it exercised. Now, for us traders, we are trading the intrinsic value within the contracts during the movements, but or the derivative value during the movements, but um, again, the intrinsic value of contracts is still 50 cents, that's all it takes to open and that's all they're truly worth. Um, any worth above or below that is purely based on market conditions. So if that 50 cents runs to $1 million, then it still cost you 50 cents to technically write that call. Yeah, and gamma flips work very well. Gamma flips also tell you pretty much exactly what's going on with the options because the gamma is essentially where the drive towards that certain strike is. So if there's a lot of gamma within, say the where we're at right now, we're at the 654. Say we see a huge jump in the gamma at the 655 calls. Well, that's telling you that there's a lot of interest in those calls. And I don't mean interest in the form of IV type interest. I just mean interest as in, um, people lining up to buy those positions. That's really what the gamma is showing is that there's people online ready to buy those positions when that level hits. So that's a really good way to determine where your levels are going to go for the day because if you see large gamma to the upside, that's telling you very likely that there's a large amount of interest in those contracts to the upside. You're seeing the gamma push downward, and inversely you're expecting large push to the downside. Does it always work that way? Not always. Sometimes you can have gamma moves where it's telling you almost 100% that you're going to be seeing upside on the day, but because of um, the news, anything else, you end up seeing a massive sell on the day. So you have to use kind of everything in conjunction with each other. You have to use all these signals in tandem and really build the story of what's going on throughout the entirety of the session. So again, we're waiting for short positions here. If I could talk. Um, Technically we've already had some entries, but I want to be super, super, super patient because I do think that we can potentially be seeing some more upside um prior to the downside here. But on the 1 minute time frame, we are starting to see some of this bearish structure with this head and shoulders, likely trying to build out that right shoulder. So if you're feeling gutsy, if you're feeling up to it, then that right shoulder short towards the bottom of the day would be a large potential. But again, just remember 20 month positions are generally not what I'm looking to um, enter enter on. Usually those are what I try to exit on. Um, what else here? I want to look at the volatility again. Volatility still elevated, but it wasn't elevated towards the level it was at the beginning of the day. So not really an indication of bullishness so far, because remember, literally every cent this is going upward is telling you that they are expecting bearish downside, but it pulling downward slightly is still showing a little bit of reprieve in that downside pressure. So Microsoft seeing a little bit of inverse cup forming here. Seeing that on the 1 minute time frame too. We do have to be careful though, because with the 1 minute time frame, this can create conditions to bounce to the upside. So we do have to be careful of that. And I want to look at Microsoft, or not Microsoft, but NVIDIA. Video, we're seeing this micro head and shoulders here that we were talking about earlier, starting to close. This micro head and shoulders closing will be taking us to much lower lows of the day. So we will be looking for that. QQQ, still just working on some of that structure. By looking for that right shoulder. On that right shoulder, that would be a good entry point. Okay, so that's what we're looking at here. Um, I want to look at our volatility really quick. I'm going to keep the screen here just for a moment. I want to go say hi to my daughter really quick. So I will be back in just a few minutes, but um, I will be here after the fact. My wife's taking her to school today, so um, yeah, just I'll be right back in maybe like 5 minutes, everybody. So just take a breather. Right now, we're waiting for our put entry. Technically, you could have already entered puts, but I want to be very, very patient because I want our put entry to be super, super ideal. So we're waiting for this right shoulder prior to that. Anyway, I will be right back in a few minutes, everybody. So just make sure you're watching everything very, very closely. All right, everybody, I'm back. Um, my daughter's still here for a few minutes, so um, I do have really bad hiccups right now, so I do apologize if I like randomly cut out. Um, okay, so I was away during our potential entry on this Head and Shoulders here. Um, that looked very, very prime for the entry. Okay, on the puts. Now, with that said, that does not mean go out and chase puts here. Um, I'm gonna check a few other things first before we really engage anything crazy here. But I do believe that we still have room on puts prior to the full breakdown. So again, I really am looking towards that 654 range. Not today, very, very likely over the next week or so. So if we could secure puts today, that will be very ideal. Um, 30-minute time frame, and I do apologize with the drawings here. Let me go ahead and hide them for a moment. 30-minute time frame is showing that we do still have a little bit of reprieve prior to fully pushing down. Okay, so we will be looking for that. Now on semiconductors, 5-minute time frame is giving us pretty much all the structure we need to really get going. Oh, yeah, that's your ears, huh? Yeah, that's coming from downstairs. It's okay. Um, anyway, with semiconductors, we see a little bit of, it's okay, Amelia, honey. We see this bullish cup invalidated. So I'm gonna go ahead and delete that. Now, from that being invalidated, we did see this inverse cup close. From the inverse cup closing, we are expecting a bit of a handle. So potentially a little more upside here, but not entirely set on that just yet. Seeing a little bit of bearish structure in there too on the 1-minute time frame. For SPY here, I can write correctly. Look at the 1-minute time frame. 1-minute time frame can be giving us a little bit of a reprieve here, so we will look for this to see if we can potentially have a small cup close here to the upside. From that cup closing, continue out the right shoulder and take puts to the downside. Now again with these puts, I'm not taking 0 DTs. I might take like 1 or 2 just to take some of that premium to the downside. Really hope they're not pushing for that downside yet. Let's check VVIX. Starting to pull back up again. No major leg upward just yet. Yeah, bye. I love you. Yeah, I'll fix that for you when you get home. Yeah, bye. I love you. Have fun at school. So cute. Anyway, semiconductors starting to close this inverse cup here a little bit. I am looking for a little bit of reprieve prior to that, but with the structure being very, very bearish here, this can just kind of ignore, this lower Bollinger being there and really aim for the gap close. 5-minute time frame shows us that there's a huge potential for that to occur. So again, we do want to try to set up puts if we can get any form of. upside, which fortunately I was away during the formation of that right shoulder, unfortunately. So, okay, what I'm looking for here, that from this inverse cup closing, we will be looking for, again, push upward towards the 20 mil. From the 20 mil, we'll be looking for additional puts to the downside. I'll be right back in just a minute. I need to get my daughter in the car. Alright, everybody, sorry about that. My daughter gets a little crazy sometimes. In a good way. She's a great kid. I love her. Okay. We are looking for puts today. We had two very good trades so far, but we want puts to the downside. Now, I missed the right shoulder. Okay. There's nothing I could do about that. So, what I am looking for, again, we do have this cup closed. From this cup closing, we should be anticipating full structure, pulling upward slightly, seeing the 20 MA heading downward, kind of like what we did with the calls earlier today. We should be seeing almost that exact same type of structure. Head back up to the 20 MA. From the 20 MA, we will enter more of those TQQQ puts for, roll 17th slash May 1st. If I can talk without my throat cutting out on me. Um, so that's the plan. Okay, so we will be seeing a little bit of a push downward here. But from that push downward, we will look for a little bit of a reprieve. So Personally, I'm not going to take calls into that reprieve, even though there is the room. Um, I just feel like the conditions on the day are starting to get a little too bearish. And what I mean by that is that volatility in both aspects, whether it's the positive or negative volatility, likes to start off slow and then start building up very quickly. And the reason why it builds up quickly is because one position is getting squeezed out generally. Um, so for example, if you're seeing negative volatility going crazy, that means that the bearish positions are, having to pay that out. If we're seeing volatility head upward very largely, we're seeing the bullish positions having to pay that out. So, um, yeah, volatility is very high right now. Uh, Probably close to 119. Yeah, 119.05. Excuse me, losing my voice again. Was that the 119.23? 119.16 currently. Really expecting that to push up very slightly. However, with many of these structures throughout SPY, let me go ahead and check semiconductors QQQ just to make sure everything is aligning. So, second. Yep, close cup and QQQ, closed cup. Okay, so all of these cups have closed. Um, from these closed cups, we should be seeing a very, very light reprieve. Now, let me look at the 30-minute time frame. Even on the 30-minute time, I could talk right. I apologize, my throat keeps cutting out. On the 30-minute time frame, we should be expecting a reprieve at least to the 5 mile. Now, the 5 mile is at the 581.89. Give me a second. I'm gonna drink some water. Okay. Anyway, from this downside push, our 30-minute time frames are telling us that we do have some upside reprieve. Now, I am not looking for the full 20 mod to the upside here on the 30-minute time frame. I am looking a lot closer to the 5 mod. So the 5 mod is at that 581.92 on the 5-minute time frame. That 581.92 basically is going to be right where that 20 mile is. So that aligns very much so with pulling back upwards, seeing this 20 mile pulling downwards slightly, catching more puts on the 20 mile to the downside. Now there is room for calls again to catch that 20 mile range, but that's not something I'm wanting to do right now. Again, I just want to wait for the put entry. From the put entry, I will take dated puts and write those out. I'm a little sad that we did miss the right shoulder building, um, especially when I was specifically looking for that. Of course, that was right when I had to step away. So that's unfortunate, but it is what it is. With that, we're looking for a little bit of upside reprieve. We'll enter into those dated puts. Now, VVIX still pushing up very greatly on the day. So 119.39. Oh, excuse me. 119.39. Um, with this being close to the upper Bollinger now on the 5-minute time frame, I am looking for a little bit of a reprieve to the downside. The downside on this would be closer to that 118.18. So we will be looking for that prior to re-entering puts today. So that's the current goal. If anyone has any questions or anything about that, now is a very good time. I am trying to stream as long as I can today, but just a reminder, I am kind of in a lot of pain right now. I broke two of my fingers and fractured the other one and fractured my knuckle. Um, so in quite a lot of pain, and I'm having to maneuver everything with my non-dominant hand, so it's a little bit of a strain. But with that said, I'm still going to be trying to stream as long as I can today. I just don't know how long that's going to be. So, seeing a little bit of that upside reprieve, but again, we basically want to see all the way back up to this 653.70. It'll very likely be a lot closer to that 653.50 by the time we actually hit that level. Um, but that will be the level. Excuse me, sorry for yawning. That will be the level that I'll be looking for to enter some of those TQQQ puts to the downside. Again, that will be for April 17th. And for May 1st, I am targeting the 40 strike puts. So, um, you know, very well within strike range within the time that we're expecting. We actually expect these to run in the money quite a bit. See the last pull down. Yeah, so these should be running in the money by roughly by $3. You know, and that's prior to the $2+ upside prior to that. So, okay, so this is our upside here, starting to kick in a little bit. This is good. This is what we're looking for to enter the into the further puts. We're not at our level yet. We need to be very, very patient for our level. Again, we always want to be extremely patient when we see our levels because the likelihood is that we're going to get it. If we don't get it, then the trade wasn't good. So, simple as that. Seeing Hig and Liquid still seeing selling on the day. So that is still telling us that. Oh, excuse me, not trying to yawn in everybody's ears. That's still telling us that with Liquid and Hig selling on the day, that we can be seeing, you know, in much further downside. Nvidia here did pull down to the 173.66. Lower Bollinger on the 5-minute time frame, so we are expecting a bit of that reprieve. We're seeing a little bit of that reprieve within NVIDIA. That's still about a whole 60 cents more upside. That doesn't take a whole lot of time to hit, so make sure you're starting to at least watch list some of those TQQQ puts. And those are the 40 strike puts for April 17th and May 1st. Um, If you want to go for something slightly cheaper, I wouldn't go anything below the 38 strike. And even that's kind of pushing it a little bit, but you're still going to get the downside premium on the move. Uh, assuming we get the move that I'm expecting us to get to the downside, then those 38 calls would still be in the money by, roughly 90 cents. So would still be a very nice option. That is slightly cheaper. So always try to add a plethora of different options because I mean, just because you can buy the most expensive contract doesn't mean you always want to. I mean, there's times where I buy the cheap contracts even though I see the move in plain sight. It really just depends on how much value I think I'm gonna get from everything, and I don't really have time to explain that right in this moment. I can teach a whole class on that later. But there is a way to properly target in the money, at the money, and out of the money strikes. So I will be happy to teach that eventually. I was working on my car, so I was trying to put new liquids in it, and the um, stick holding up the hood snapped. And yeah, punched my hand really bad. Went all the way down into the lower part of my right hand on the right side, closer to the bottom or to the top of the wrist. So it like smacked the my pinky to middle finger um down to that side of the hand, and it tore a bunch of ligaments and everything within the hand very deep. Um and that's the part that is really the painful part more so than any of the fractures or breaks or anything. It's that I basically ripped open my muscles really bad, so um a lot of pain with that. I don't know how long I'm gonna have the cast on. I wasn't really paying attention to that when they put it on, so no clue about that. But hopefully not too long. Hopefully it doesn't take too long because it is difficult to maneuver everything without your dominant hand. And then the irony of things is that I got home and tripped yesterday. And on that same right arm, I skinned my elbow, so it was like I have a cast. Then my arm's bleeding because I skinned my elbow. So now I have a big old bandage on my elbow. Just not having the best week in terms of personal luck. Okay, upside reprieve. This is exactly what I'm looking for to enter puts. Okay. Um, this is exactly what I'm looking for here. Okay, so April 17th, 40 strike puts. That's exactly what you want. Again, if you cannot afford the 40 strike puts for April 17th, try to get the sorry, I'm trying to get a bid in quick. So let's see if we can buy these at 153 per. Okay, cool. Got those. 153 per. Um, if you can't afford the 40 strike, then at least try to get the 30 strike or the 38 strike, because that will still be within strike of the entire move. So, okay, perfect. That was our entry on the day. Um, I'm very, very happy with how things are looking right now with those puts. Um, Now here's a couple things to consider on the day. Is that one, we are below the 5 mile, and let me go ahead and show this on the daily time frame. Might look a little wonky with some of the drawings here. Okay, no, it won't. So let me go ahead and get this all pulled up. Now, my thesis, and I'm gonna hide the drawings here for a while, is that we're really starting to enter into a bear market. Okay, and what that means is that all of our supports are going to be pulling below this 200 um uh, support range. Okay, which is, for the daily time frame, that's 200 trading session support. So very, very key level. Okay. That level is currently at the 659.69, basically that 660 range. We've been talking about this entire week, and you know, last week as well, that 660 range, we were really, really eyeballing for a major rejection to the downside. Okay. One of the main reasons why is that this is a standard pattern within a bearish structure is to head up to the 5 mile, reject down to the lower Bollinger, head up to the 5 mile, reject down to the lower Bollinger. You will continue doing that until the market sees or needs enough liquidity to take the 20 mile, and from that 20 mile we should be expecting again rejection back down to the downside. We're seeing many forms of this so far. We're seeing the rejection of the 200 mile, we're seeing the rejection of the 20 mile, and potentially we're starting to see the rejection of the 5 mile. So the level below us is currently the 10 mile. The 10 mile is at the 649.44. And while I don't really look at that as a level to test, because again, the 10 watt to me is more of a short-term indicator, um, this 10 watt is still a very key level. Okay, so that is the next level to pull towards is that 10 mile. See the 5 mile start pulling downward again, retest the 5 mile, head down towards the lower Bollinger. So that's the true expectation I'm, you know, expecting to see over the next few days, over the next week and a half, is really to see this major 20 mile slash 200 mile rejection to the downside and to start pushing back into the lower Bollinger towards that 129 range. I will be right back. 1 second, I have to open the door for my cat. Okay, and I'm back. Sorry about that. No, I have a miniature Bengal, which they are awesome cats, but they are absolutely crazy. So, yeah, she likes to open doors, she likes to turn water on, she likes to do everything a cat normally doesn't do. So, I love her to bits. Um, anyway, thesis of the day so far, and again, I'm really expecting this out of QQQ Semiconductors, NVIDIA, Microsoft, pretty much everything. We've been seeing bearish structure throughout the entirety of the day. None of that bearish structure has been, um, invalidated so far, so it's looking very good to see a fairly major selling day. Now, again, the thing we do have to be concerned of is that we do have the 5 mile above us, we do have the 20 mile above us, and those are very, very, very strong ranges. Okay, so if we have any form of good news, we can absolutely head upward and slap that range. So if you're concerned about your puts in any form whatsoever, and even if you're not, you should be hedging some upside. Now, with TQQQ, I want to look at the April 17th. And for my upside in TQQ, I want to expect basically a push all the way above this 20 mile. So my upside, I'm going to put at that 46 strike. Okay. Currently, TQQQ is at 42.40. So that 46 strike, yes, it's out of the money, but it's still close enough to definitely cover some of that upside hedge if we see, some good news change the trend and everything of the overall market. But so far we're seeing that um, you know, it's extremely, extremely likely that we're going to be seeing a full ground incursion into Iran. Um, extremely, extremely likely we're going to be seeing a pop in oil. Um, that should very, very highly correlate to an increase within the dollar, increase within the treasury yields, and an increase in volatility overall. So, um, I'm not really expecting anything different than that. We've been looking very, very closely at the positioning of, the USA and Israel forces. We've been looking very closely at what's going on with the Iranian forces, and you know, nothing is telling me that a peace deal is even trying to be met right now. Um, again, I said this a week and a half ago, 2 weeks ago. Um, I'm pretty sure that any form of ceasefire or anything like that is going to be folly. I do believe that the president wants control of the strait. Um, and he did make that very clear in a press conference yesterday, actually. Um, a reporter was asking a question about um, something to do with Iraq being able to charge maritime fees towards the Strait of Hormuz. And what President Trump said was that, well, we should be able to be the ones setting the prices and everything in that region. We're going to be the ones controlling it. Um, Again, that's not the type of language we expect when we're expecting ceasefires, when we're expecting, um, anything really outside of a ground incursion. So I do think that we're going to be seeing quite a bit of bearishness. So I am expecting that within the actual news so far, which is I've been reading while talking, not really seeing anything major. State-run Tehran Times newspaper on X, diplomatic and indirect channels of talks with the U.S. are not closed, but whatever. That doesn't really mean anything. Trump is in a mode of defiance, official says. A senior administration official described Trump as proud of the airman rescue and in a mode of defiance. He remains open to diplomacy, but is focused on maximum pressure on Iran, with no decisions yet on actions if a deal isn't reached tonight. So I, I'm I'm almost positive we're going to be seeing a full ground incursion. Um, I'd be beyond surprised not to. Okay, so I'm gonna take a look at some instruments here in a minute. Just taking a moment to relax and get my kitty. Her name's Yuki. I'll take a picture for you guys if you want. Hold on one second. Here, look at the camera, Yuki. There we go. Okay, and I'll post that in the Discord. But anyway, let me go ahead and start looking at some of these signals and everything what we got going on here. I want to circle back to the VVIX, which I'm doing this on my phone. VVIX is at the 118.85. So I do believe we're seeing a very, very slight reprieve, if I am remembering correctly. Yep, it was at the 119.44. Oh, Sparky's calling me. I have to talk to him about that. To talk to us about that too, but I cannot answer that right now. Sorry about that, Sparky. So volatility is still elevated, but having, again, a very, very slight pull down. Bitcoin, we are still seeing bearish structure, but we do have to be a little cautious because there is the potential of a micro cup building. So we do have to watch out for that to see if that's going to invalidate any of this bullish structure or this bearish structure to the downside. And I want to, excuse me, I apologize for yawning in your ears. I want to look at a few other things really quick. So QQQ, I'm expecting a 20 mile rejection here. It's basically right at the 20 mile. 20 mile is at the 581.31. So with it being at that level, I am expecting that to reject downward to continue our downward push. Now, potentially we could be seeing a little bit of a bullish structure and the microstructure on QQQ on the 1 minute time frame, but I am not seeing this just yet. And by the way, if you don't see anything on screen, that's because I'm looking at this on my phone. I do apologize. Usually I would show this on screen, but it is just a little easier for me right now with my hand being broken. So QQQ on the 1 minute time frame can be closing a micro cup and handle to the upside, so we will be watching for that. Um, that would give us further upside on the day. So we again just have to be cautious of that. We don't want to be blown out of our positions here. Now within the HIG, we are seeing, let's see, overall still selling. Very likely it's going to, excuse me, it's going to aim to reject that 5 mile. So a lot of these symbols are sitting at their either their 20 mile or their 5 mile ranges on higher time frames, which means that these are basically contention areas. These are areas to either test or succeed and push through or reject and push downward. So my expectations again are to reject and push downward, but we will see if they succeed and reclaim some of these levels. The VVIX is still very elevated, but it has been pulling down slightly, so it's at 118.75. It was all the way up at 119.44. So until we start seeing this push back upward again, this can be showing us a little bit of a buying reprieve in here. Yeah, that's what I heard, is that last Friday it was planned for the ground invasion. Um, which even going hand in hand with that, why would they be sending the jets in if they weren't planning a ground invasion, right? So a lot of signals are telling us that major ground incursion's very, very likely coming. Um, as much as I hate for it to happen, um, again, I do not support war at all, even though sometimes war is a necessary evil, but I still don't support war. People being killed is never ideal. But unfortunately, it does look like the United States wants to go for it. So volatility here, pulling back slightly. Um, with it hitting this 20 mile range, I am expecting it to push back upward. See, I'm getting some text messages, so hold on. Okay, nothing major. Okay, and at this point, what we're really waiting for is a bounce off of this 20 mile on the 5 minute time frame for the VVIX. The 20 mile is currently right at the 118.57, so we're literally at that level to the penny. So I'm expecting again a bounce to the upside within volatility. Um, Oil is just absolutely super elevated today, all the way at the 142. Um, I cannot stop yawning. I apologize. But I am looking for this inverse cup that did close off properly. So I am looking for a rejection within that cup's potential inverse handle. So we are looking for that. Still looking for signals for that to occur. If I could stop yawning, I do apologize. But until then, we're just in limbo. We're waiting for volatility to tell us something. We're waiting for one of our signals to really tell us that we're going to continue the selling to the downside, or we're going to see major retests to the upside. Which again, you should be hedged in your positions if you're in puts. So don't stress about either way we go right here. Prior inverse up here on semiconductors not invalidated. So kind of the same situation we had going on earlier with NVIDIA. But with this cup being formed here, if they were going to take the bullish cup, they would have to pull all the way up here to invalidate this prior bearish cup. So unless that happens, we will be seeing a rejection to the downside, with NVIDIA tapering off of its upper Bollinger here on the 1 minute time frame. That can be giving us a little bit of an indication that it wants to pull backward. 5 minute time frame, it is pushing upward towards this upper Bollinger. So if we do see that push to the upper Bollinger, that will invalidate the previous bearish structure. So we do have to be aware of that. Essentially on the 5 minute time frame, we are looking for NVIDIA to pull back towards the 20 MA. 20 MA is at the 340.84, so we are looking for roughly $1.10 downward. Volatility is still pulling downward slightly. We do want to see this push back upward to signal to us that we will see selling continuing. Same thing we have on NVIDIA here with the SPY, that we do have this inverse cup here. And as long as we do not invalidate this entire structure, then this will turn into a handle for this inverse cup to continue pushing to the downside. But we do have this level marked out just in case it does start to hit. That way we can be entirely prepared for it. Okay, I am gonna get a little more coffee here because I'm gonna end up falling asleep on you guys if not. Um, which would mean that I'd likely be streaming longer, but I wouldn't be able to give any commentary or anything because I'd be passed out. So, it would not be a very useful stream. Now, that said, we're going to continue to watch volatility here for a moment while I grab myself some coffee. Um, Not looking for any current contracts or anything crazy at the moment. Adding to those TQQQ puts for April 17th and May 1st. Um, Outside of that, I'd be entirely sitting on my hands being patient. Um, this could be closing a micro cup right here. From that micro cup, we could be seeing structure to the downside, which can create the conditions where the bears just totally take that level, invalidate that cup. Um, we're not out of the woods at all yet, so we need to just be very, very patient here and wait for some of these positions to open. Um, Again, on QQQ, semiconductors and everything, those those short positions that we've been talking about, tacking on the TQQQ puts for again next week, and well, I think it's next week. Maybe it's 2 weeks out. When's the 17th? Yeah, 17th next Friday. And then for May 1st, so we are looking for some time on these. Um, I do kind of expect some chop today as, there is potentially a massive event going on tonight. If the Iranians do not create the conditions to have, the United States pull back and not totally start a conflict with them, then, you know, we could potentially see a rally, but nothing is telling me that that's the case. Generally, if you're going to be seeing ceasefires and things, usually you're going to be expecting, um, you know, the actual conflict itself slowing down. But we're not seeing that. We're seeing continued escalation within the attacks on both sides. We're hearing from one side that the United States is in contact with them, and at other times that they're not, and that the conditions are just not good enough, and blah 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 blah. So I really do expect, um, for us to get some bad news this afternoon. And I'm wondering if that's what they've been preparing this week for, is basically saying, okay, um, let's see if we can get talks going again. Take a whole nother week to clear out some of those AA and be able to reposition that ground incursion again. Because from everything I was hearing, last Friday was supposed to be when we were going to be taking Karg and things like that, but it makes perfect sense with um those jets being shot down, why we would pause that. Volatility, again, we're just waiting for that push upward. We're seeing it pushing upward very, very slightly. It was all the way at the 118.39, so it's back up to 118.52. So, our volatility and everything is still telling us that very likely we see this inverse cup and handle to the downside, likely see the low of the day, and start heading towards that 10 mile. Okay, everybody, I'm gonna make some more coffee so I don't fall asleep. Um, Again, thank you for watching the stream so far up to this point. I really appreciate each and every one of you. Um, it's not easy to get up, especially when you're on painkillers and your hands in pain and everything else, to come get on the computer and trade. So I do it with love. I know a lot of people think I do it for the money. Um, Truly isn't the case. I do it so that hopefully I can teach everybody something um, with what I know. Sorry, my phone just fell down on my cat, so she jumped. No new news yet. So yeah, I'm really expecting full ground incursion. Okay, everybody, I'm gonna take about 5 minutes. Again, we kind of should be all on the same page of what to be expecting both upside and downside here. Um, I do want to circle around to the VVIX because I know not everybody has the premium paid for, so you might have the 15-minute delay where mine should be fully real time, if I'm not getting screwed on what I'm paying for. So yeah, okay. I will be right back in like 5 minutes, everybody. So thank you for watching so far, but hopefully we will have, another hour or so within the day where I can stay awake and continue to trade. I'll be right back, everybody. All right, everybody, I am back. Let's see what's going on. Okay, start with the SPY. So SPY here, we see that 1 minute cup and handle starting to form. Now, as long as we do not fully complete the structure to the upside and validate the previous, um, bearishness that we had, then this level will be fine. What I am looking for is the formation of a head and shoulders. I can draw it, I apologize. Very hard to draw on everything today. And also with this is that we have a completed cup. From that completed cup, we should be anticipating bearish structure to the downside. With this being on the 1 minute time frame, I just want to correlate things really quick. So on the 5 minute time frame, slight push above the 20 MA, but if it can gravitate back down to that range, which that 20 MA is at the 653.26. So if it can gravitate back down to that range, start building that raised shoulder, then that will be our head and shoulder liquidity. With the 1 minute time frame showing the upper Bollinger pushed here, that is giving the room for that bit of reprieve. A 1 minute time frame may not look like a whole lot of reprieve, but it does take us back down to the 653.04. So we will be looking for that to see if we're going to see completion of this micro bullish or bearish structure here. QQQ, bit of the same thing, has not completed the cup to the upside either. So we will be watching that very closely. It needs to head all the way back up towards the 583.24 to really solidify that upside and to invalidate some of this downside that's been building throughout the day. Then semiconductors, I don't think the level hit all the way. Nope, it did not hit all the way. It got very close, which I know some people might count that as a completed cup, but for me, as long as that cup is not completed to the level and above the level, then this is telling me that it is not a completed cup. So the reason why I look for the completion for the cup at the level and then above is because above the bullish cup, if we're seeing that bullish cup correctly, then I am anticipating bearish structure because again, we need to be able to have a cup and handle. To get the handle to the downside, we need to have, okay, my Webull closed, hold on. Give me a second, everybody. Yes, with oil dropping, the market can go up. So hold on, let me go back. So what I was just looking at. So again, on semiconductors here, um, if we don't see this inverse, or if we don't see this bullish cup completed, or if we do see it completed, excuse me, I'm just losing my train of thought here, we should be anticipating a push above the cup to build bullish or to build bearish structure to the downside. Because that's how you get the handle pulls downward, grabs that liquidity, and then heads back upward. So that's what I would be looking for if I am bullish on the day, which again, I'm really not bullish on the day. Now, we do have this level at the 654.40 that can create, drawing out, sorry. This can create a micro cup here. So we will be watching for that. From that micro cup, we again can anticipate some bearish structure. I'm still looking for bearish structure in here. I'm still looking for some form of head and shoulders to build. Something to tell us that the top of these cups are really solidified and that we can start targeting some of this downside. Now, with the movements here today, um, potentially we could even be pulling back up to this upper Bollinger on the 5-minute time frame. Pulling back up to the upper Bollinger on the 5-minute time frame would give us another short position to the downside in terms of both 0 DTE and dated positions. So um, we will be looking for that to see if that opens up for us. But currently, I am looking for some form of bearish structure in here. Okay. Now, I do want to circle back to volatility, and I do want to look at oil as well. So volatility pulling down slightly. Now, this may seem like it's pulling down quite a bit, but again, we've seen this pull down, I think, what, 9 something plus dollars, and then recover the entirety of that plus some on the day. So VVIX can move very, very, very aggressively. So don't count it out. As long as it's above that 98 range, then the market is still within a selling position overall. So we do see some of these smaller bearish structures being invalidated, and we are looking for, let's see if we close this cup to the upside. Now again, if we do close this cup to the upside, I will be looking for a 0 DT short position. Cup is closed at that 655. Trying to get the exact level. Basically, we're at that level though. It's um perfectly within that level to take the short position. Now, I do want to check the news just to make sure that we're not getting some crazy news release that's causing this. No, I'm not seeing anything. Okay, so I'm going to be shorting into this. And with these positions, seeing, let's go to the 5-minute time frame. The 20 is at the 653.35. So technically you can take puts all the way to the 652 and they should be perfectly fine. So I am going to start trying to get some puts going. Trying to navigate everything in time with a broken hand is not fun. Okay, I have orders in, but I'm not sure if they're gonna hit in time. But I did place some orders for the 653 puts. Which I do think I'm gonna have to adjust it here very likely. Let me look at the VVIX really quick. VVIX 117.16. So we haven't gotten that pull up just yet, so we should be seeing a little bit more upside. So I'm gonna go ahead and keep my orders open on those puts so that I can grab them to the downside. Should hit. But if I do have to chase these puts, I will. Um, just because I'm literally only a few cents off of opening them. Seeing a very, very slight spike in the VVIX. Still have not secured my puts yet. Give us a push up. Yeah, I think I just need to jump in. Which I will probably regret slightly, but I'm okay with that. Okay, we are getting a slight push upwards, so let's see if my puts will clear. Come on. Need 4 more cents. You can do it. You can do it. Come on. 2 more cents. 1 more cent. Just give me my puts already. Let me check the VVIX one last time. 117.28. Really don't want to have to chase these puts if I don't have to, because that would save me a little bit of money. Come on, give us about 30 cents upside. No, I think we're gonna have to chase these. Okay, so it's looking like we're gonna have to jump into these regardless. So, okay, all right, and with this, with these puts, again, we are just targeting the 5 minute 20 mile here. 5 minute 20 mile is at the 653.35. So roughly dollar downside, $1.50 downside in those puts. Very likely those puts, since they have not closed this upward cup, it did close some of these smaller cups on the day so far, but I'm not too worried about that. This can still form some major bearish structure on the day by forming a head and shoulders here. So that's what I'm looking for pretty much for the entirety of the day, is that I am looking for the head and shoulders to the downside. Now, if you are bullish on the day, then you're just looking for this break above the 657.67, basically close this cup, see this inverse head and shoulders, um, and just continue looking for that upside. Um, but with volatility extremely elevated today, and let's go ahead and take a look at it one last time. 117.69. So, and super elevated. As long as it's above that 92 to 98 range, it does tell you that selling is actively happening. So, I am expecting this to continue back upward on the day. Very likely heading back up towards that 122 range. But if we're going to be seeing the bullish side take, then we will be seeing the VVIX pulling down a lot closer to about that 113. to really solidify that selling is kind of working its way out of the system. Now, USO, you're seeing a little bit of a reprieve within the selling here or within the buying here, but you do have a very bullish structure. You have the completed cup, which, sorry, these are going to be a little janky because I'm using my opposite hand. You have the handle on that cup. You have the nested cups handle having a breakout. And from that breakout, you have a little bit of a breakdown. But this is still all a portion of this larger cup. Okay, so we should be seeing oil breaking well above that 144 range today. Very, very, very likely. Especially with the 5-minute time frame, it did pull down to the lower Bollinger. That creates the conditions where it can start pulling upward again. And a lot of our tech symbols have done very similar. They pushed up into the upper Bollinger. From that upper Bollinger, it creates the conditions where we can see quite a bit of downside. So, again, I am looking for the bearish structure here, looking for the downside overall in the day. But just don't get trapped into positions. This is why we did hedge when we were towards the low of the day. Um, just in case we get some absurd upside. But overall, I'm not really expecting that. We still have this major cup on semiconductors that did not close. Um, Go ahead and label that level. And because this has not closed so far, this technically does not have to be a cup. This can turn again into a head and shoulders and give us much further downside. So that's what I am looking for. Let's go back to the VVIX. We're seeing a slight uptick. It did pull down all the way to the 117.01. Now back to the 117.69. So this is sort of telling us that volatility very likely is going to start heading back up again today on the 5-minute time frame. Um, we're just barely above the lower Bollinger currently, so we're starting to see that reprieve. Very, very likely head back up towards the 118.51. Heading back up towards that 150 or 118.51 would invalidate some of the previous bearishness within volatility and would heavily suggest that we're heading towards that 122 range on the day. Oil starting to pull back up. Again, really expecting that 144. And I want to look at the VVIX again. Nothing major there. SPY. Again, I'm just looking for some reprieve here. We had a bit of an overshoot, which for me that's a good signal. To me, that's showing that potentially that was catching stop losses, which that's exactly what you're looking for continued downside. You're looking for dealers to catch these stops, which so far we see that multiple times today. We see that, one, two, three times so far already, where dealers have tried to catch put stops out specifically. So, um, I am still bearish on the day, even though we are seeing, potentially this little bit of buying going on. So I get my news from the Unusual Whales news because it pretty much tracks every single news organization out there, and it always catches the news pretty much before anybody else. I mean, I've really never seen other news beat the Unusual Whales news before. Um, so that's what I use for the news. Now, again, we do offer that in the Discord for 99 cents a month. Um, super, super good deal because if you were to get the membership outside of it, it'd be like, I think what, $30, $40 a month, something like that. And this covers a lot of different news sources from Bloomberg to CNN, CNBC, all that stuff. It's all live, so it tells you right away when something's happening. Not that I'm trying to sell you into the group server or anything, but it's a super good tool. I wish I knew about it years and years and years ago. Um, I would have been using that as my news source for quite a while. SPY seeing a little bit of upside. Now, potentially, we talked about this earlier, we can see this cup closing to the 657. That's not my expectations, but we did see the lower bounds of the 5 mile tested today. We're currently at the actual 5 mile, I believe, on the day. Current 5 mile is at the 655.15. So essentially, we're within that test level. We tested the lower bounds of the 5 mile. Potentially, we can now see the upper bounds of the 5 mile tested, which would be around that 657 range. So if we're heading upward, then that's kind of the target. That would be also completing the top of that cup, which is just super ironic. From the top of that cup, we would look for additional short positions at the top, because again, from the top of the cup, we would expect bearish structure to create the handle to the downside. And for volatility, still very elevated, even though we're seeing a slight pull upward in SPY and everything. Um, this is still telling us that dealers are hedging the downside, and generally dealers aren't going to be hedging the downside unless there's actual downside to be hedged. Um, that's just the way that I really interpret the VVIX, is that it's a very immediate response to things. So if there's going to be that major downside coming, then uh, they're going to hedge their positions ahead of time. So mainly looking for either a major bounce or pull downward within the VVIX to tell us that the dealers are either going to be giving up on the selling side, or um, you know, trying to reclaim a lot of that selling side. So that's what we're waiting for currently. Now, I do want to circle back to oil and everything. So oil is starting to pull back up again. That's definitely going to start weighing against the market very soon here. So I'm not expecting, this upward cup to complete at all. I really don't expect that to happen, based on what's happening with volatility, what's happening with oil. A lot of the structure so far is telling me that we shouldn't really be seeing that upside. Um, but again, we're just going to be very, very cautious here. And with NVIDIA here, we have the same sort of pattern once again forming, where we rejected the previous cup top and have not been able to reclaim that range. And further rejection downward in the video would create a head and shoulders. Head and shoulders would take us back down to the low of the day, very likely lower. So that's working well with our overall bearish thesis on the day. It's very likely NVIDIA is set up to push downward. We see our rejections like we're expecting on the SPY, then that will also play into um, what we've been seeing overall. And on the 5 minute time frame, we see the ADL pulling downward. So the ADL pulling downward, the way that it is basically saying that money is actively flowing out of the fund. So there is active selling occurring, um, even if the price is heading up very, very slightly. Oil continuing to just climb, and volatility had a very small spike to the upside, but I'm really expecting a huge leg upward here pretty soon. Very likely towards the 118.50-ish range plus. Semiconductors, waiting for you guys to down a bit. 5-minute time frame is suggesting that the semiconductors should be pulling down roughly $2 from where it's at currently, which would help SPY, QQQ, some of these other signals, or some of these other symbols have that selling weight that we're expecting. So volatility slightly pulling up. So again, every penny this heads upward is really a big deal. It means that dealers are hedging positions to the downside when that is occurring. So we're going to be very, very cautious about that. Now I do want to check the 1-minute time frame just to see if there's any bearish structure or anything going on. So I do want to see this super small cup and handle here invalidate, which we would need this to pull from the 655.40 back down, basically that 654.80 range to fully invalidate this micro cup. From invalidating that micro cup, that will create the liquidity for a micro head and shoulders here. Doesn't really look like it, but the liquidity is there. Again, if we reject that range, then we would have the left shoulder, head, and right shoulder liquidity to be able to continue downward. So we will be watching that very, very closely. Now I want to take a look at Microsoft, Nvidia. So Microsoft here, minute time frame having a bit of a pull up. 5-minute time frame. Let's see. Can pull up all the way to the 370.90. And if that does happen, that would be closing a micro bullish cup there to the upside, as well as starting to create some of this bullish structure to the upside there. So potentially Microsoft can be trying to give us some bullish push on the day. However, with the 5-minute time frame pushing into this upper Bollinger, that creates the conditions where we could start to see some uh, selling reprieve. So that can actually help with our bearish positions overall. Now Nvidia, kind of the same deal here, but again, as long as it does continue to reject this previous range, um, potentially reject this micro cup that's forming here, then that would allude to further bearishness. It's by getting very close to completing this micro cup here at the, sorry, I'm trying to get the exact level. Basically right at that 657. So still about $1.40 push for that level if we're going to really aim to knock that level out. Now it's looking likely, now 655.80. Go back to our volatility here. Volatility pulling down slightly, but it's kind of just holding the same weight. So at that 117.75. Not at the low of the day either. very, very likely we see this cup close here. If not, then that does turn into a bearish signal. That does actually help create that head and shoulders more. So we'll see if this completes or not. Now, once we do get the actual trend on the day, basically after this next move, whether we close the upside or reject and start heading downward, I will kind of lay out the rest of the day at that point. And after that, if there's any questions or anything, I'll go over them. But I am feeling pretty bad. My painkillers are really causing me to feel pretty drowsy at this point. So, um, probably not going to stream for a whole lot longer, maybe about another 10 minutes. So, if there's any questions or anything, it's a perfect time to ask. I'd be happy to go over them. Other than that, we're just waiting to see if this structure uh, completes or rejects to the downside. Okay, very likely though is going to head to the upside though. QQQ. Same with QQQ here. Again, if we can start closing some of these micro cups, then the upside is starting to look a lot better towards that 587. Um, However, if we reject this range, if we can't close these cups, then that turns into its own structure, turns into a head and shoulders, invalidates a lot of the bullish structure we've potentially been building. And from there, um, we would be expecting quite a bit more downside on the day. Yeah, you're very welcome. Hopefully these streams help. Um, I know some people might feel awkward or bad about it because they may feel like I'm trying to hold your hand the entire time while you trade, but you know, it's kind of more so that we're all a team. Um, there's so much to monitor within the market that even with what I do, um, there's so many things that can be missed during a day. I know that even within the streams within the last 2 months, that there's been times where someone said something in the chat that I didn't spot at the time, that was able to actually help our positions. So, um, we do a lot of detective work during each session to really understand where the trend's going, um, make sure that we're not just creating theses that we like, but are actually being played out within the market. So don't feel bad about, you know, watching a stream and having someone who does monitor a whole lot of stuff, talk in your ear for a little bit. Nothing wrong with that. There's nothing against your trading abilities or anything like that either. So, um, again, if I was restarting trading all over again, I wish I had access to these tools. Um, it would have entirely changed my life. It would have saved me years and years and years of failure. So, um, you know, we're all in this together. At the end of the day, we're all doing this to create a future where we can all have financial freedom for not only ourselves, but, those that we love. So we're all a team here. Nothing to feel bad about. Yeah, exactly. And that's why I really like trying to get people into the Discord. And it's like, Yes, I do charge the 99 cents for the basic, but that's mainly to cover the cost of the tools and everything because those do cost a few hundred a month. Um, I don't really make profit off of the Discord group or anything. I don't really make profit off of Patreon too much. I think I get a few hundred extra bucks a month from it. Um, that's not the goal. The goal is that I started really where everybody else started here. I started back in basically 2019. I had $3,000 to my name, and I just lost my job. My daughter was born, and she was still in the NICU at the time, and I had to figure out what to do. Um, I had some disabilities, and working a physical job just wasn't something I was able to do anymore. So I sat down, I traded. I had a really major success early on. I was able to turn $700 into $18,000 in the same day. There was a squeeze on Cosmo, um, which is COSM, and it ran from 30 cents to 20, I want to say $23. Might have been $22, but I sold at 21. Um, Absolutely incredible play. But I lost a majority of that winning. Learning how to trade over the years. I've had to go through a lot of failure to get to the point where I'm at now. Um, And I still have my times where I make my mistakes. Last year I made a huge mistake. I was going into a major, major, major short positions on semiconductors right before Oracle did their earnings. And generally, Oracle is a company that doesn't have super blowout earnings. Well, it was the one earning that they decided to get a, 500 billion cash injection and basically doubled the share price overnight. Um, I lost so much money that most people probably would have wanted to cliff dive, but you know, the only way back up is to continue forward, and that's what we do. I'm a normal trader just like you all. I just have a little bit more experience. I might have a few thousand more trades under my belt. Um, but we're truly a team here, and that's the whole dynamic is that we're a team. I'm not just trying to sell some guru garbage, has nothing to do with that. I want this to be a full certified class that I can eventually teach someday, and hire actual professors to help teach someday. Um, so yeah, just me rambling. Sorry. I think everybody can really attain financial freedom, and it seems hard when you haven't gotten to that point where you're consistently winning. But once you get to that point where you're consistently winning, and I really try not to talk about my statistics too much, um, just because it can cause some bad feelings and stuff, and I really try not to talk from like an egotistic point of view. But from the day trades I've been doing, I think my accuracy is at like a 93% right now, which is just absolutely unheard of. And we take our trades very, very slow, very consistently, very safe. No, we're not going to hit every single trade, but that's not the goal. Um, these people that sit here and chat saying, "Oh, I'm consistent for 30 days straight and every single trade I have is a win." They're full of it. It's not real. That's not what a real trader does. Um, Real traders are going to have times where you're going to get absolutely washed. And the best thing you can do is learn from it, learn how to mitigate some of that downside and just better prepare for the future. Um, Because again, I consider myself a very experienced trader. I mean, I do this for a living, and I still get caught out at times. Um, and I read these things, you know, I see all this structure without having to draw it. Drawing the structure is really to be able to visualize it for the stream, but I see this all in my head. So you can get to that point. I know you can because I've trained people who've gotten to that point who did sit there and say every day that I'll never be able to do this. I'm going to fail. I'm going to never succeed at this. I'm just going to waste money and this is going to be nothing for me. I've seen people with that mindset succeed. Um, and if those people can succeed, then people that are actually trying, that are actually being diligent, that are actually listening to experienced traders will succeed. It doesn't matter if it takes months, years, even a decade, it's still going to be worth your time. Yeah, and that's what happens. That's what really happens with a lot of these early wins. Um, they feel great, but you don't know how to win or lose really. You just know how to look at the market and see that the candles are going up or down, and based on news, anything else, you make your trades. But that's not how trades are really made. Once you know the technicals behind the trades, once you know that, okay, I can sit here on the 5-minute time frame, I can enter at the lower Bollinger, take it to the 20 ma, go through all these technicals throughout the multiple different time frames and actually prepare these trades, then you know that, okay, I have, X amount of dollars right now. I can actually work with that. I can actually do, X, Y, or Z with that. It's not just some random gamble win because anybody can get those random wins. But not everybody can sit here and trade consistently. So if you focus on the consistent signals and everything, you will get those wins that become those massive, you know, squeeze type plays. It's kind of like how we trade or how I um really promote the scalp trades, right? For smaller accounts, you might only be able to take a single contract at a time for the beginning, right? Well, for that single contract, you may not be getting a whole lot of profit, but it's going to slowly add up, whether that's $10 you made in profit, $50 you made, $100, doesn't really matter. You just have to keep doing that. Keep doing that for a few days, keep doing that for a few weeks, keep doing that for a few months, and then eventually you'll be able to add more contracts. And then it won't be just riding to that 20 mile anymore. It'll be riding runners to the lower Bollinger. So you get all that profit off of those major entries, and then you start hitting some of those home runs because that's when you can really get those positions running the length that they're going to run. But until that point, you just have to be very, very diligent, very, very consistent, and just focus on these trades that, we know are very safe. Um, get that portfolio built. Doesn't matter if it takes, again, it doesn't matter if it takes a whole year to build a portfolio just to be able to trade multiple contracts at a time. This is the rest of your life. Every single penny you make in your portfolio, if you use it properly, is going to benefit the rest of your life. So, taking this as seriously as you can is going to be the best thing for you in the future. That's why I'm so passionate about teaching, you know, about trading and everything because it really opens things that most other careers can never even dream of. Um, I've seen people go from absolutely dirt poor broke and I don't want to bring up any names, but there was a young kid about 6 months ago who I knew since the beginning of the program, or since the beginning of me starting the group and everything. He was one of the first members, and he I think he is either 18 or 19, last I talked to him. Very, very young. Okay, very young. His family was struggling. He was in his head over debt with school because he just got accepted into a medical school, um, some sort of top school. So it's going to be over, $100,000 plus for his his degree. So he was going to be in massive, massive debt. Okay. I think he had a little less than $1,000 to his name. And while he did find his own trading strategy, I 100% attribute that to him. And every single one of you can do the exact same thing. Learning the basics and learning how to read charts is what really allowed him to get to that point. And now he's not broke anymore. He has over $2 million. Um, he's he's very, very good to go. So don't think that your life can't change very, very quickly from trading. Um, I've seen it. I've seen it firsthand. That day when I took $700 and turned it into 18,000. I mean, did I think I would do that? I had no clue. Um, you know, just take it slow and steady. We will see the end game. We will see the end game goal here. And each and every one of you can get there. So, um, you don't have to be some super genius trader. You don't have to have some rocket science computer setup to do it. We just have to focus on very, very key signals that actually matter. And from those key signals, we'll build on it. We will make mistakes at times. There will be times where you think a trade's going to go very, very well and it's going to completely just blow up in your face and it's going to suck and everything else, but we will get through it. And that's really what this group's about, is that I'm not going anywhere, the group's not going anywhere, and we're all here for the same goal. So if there's anywhere to learn and grow, you are definitely in the right spot. You're probably in one of the only spots that are gonna allow you to grow without people ragging on you and being egotistical in the chat and everything too, because I know a lot of stock groups are like that. Um, so yeah, that's me just rambling. Thank you, and that means a lot to me. And to me, that's what really separates a lot of these fake gurus, is that they're trying to sell you something. For me, I'm not trying to sell you anything. I could absolutely bump the prices up on my stuff, and I'm almost positive I'd be able to get the customers I want for that. Um, I know that what we have here is very, very solid information, but that's not my goal. I originally started this group um being entirely free. I wanted it to stay that way. The only reason why I added the 99-cent charge was purely because of the tools. And um, I want us to all succeed. Um, I want this to be something where, you know, my daughter can look at in the future and be able to have a future with trading. And that's really why I made it. So, um, I know some people have gotten mad at me in the past for some of the charges and stuff I've done on things, but I do keep I do try to keep everything focused on a good mindset and whatnot. I'm really not here to try to take money from people. But let me go ahead and take a look at some of the signals going on. I'm gonna go ahead and clear the drawings for the day so that we can kind of just look at this from a fresh perspective before I head out. So volatility. Still very elevated today. Has been pulling down, has not pulled down to the low of the day. Okay. Um, with how the structure is forming on this on the 5-minute time frame, it does look like it wants to pull down towards that 116 range, which for the SPY, for semiconductors, for QQQ and everything else, that should take us to a new high of the day, or at least closing these cups at that 657.64 range. Okay. From closing those cups, we should be pushing into the upper Bollinger on the 5-minute time frame. Pushing into the upper Bollinger. At that point, we will be looking for major bear structure. And the reason why is because this cup and handle kind of can be elusive. So this can still be part of a prior structure and look like a cup that is closing while not being the same structure. I know this doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but if I draw this out like this, it'll make a lot more sense. Okay, that's its own structure there. And very likely, this is its own individual structure that's building. Now, very likely, this individual structure is that head and shoulders that we've been really trying to identify for the day. However, the whole goal of the day is to make sure that we're correct about that this truly is that structure that is its own separate structure, and that is not a part of this prior structure. Because if it is a part of this prior structure, then look what happens. All of a sudden, we're going up quite a lot. Okay. Um, it's funny how much it shifts the perspective of what each structure can really look for. Because if we're looking at this structure, we're looking for not just that downside, but pushing much, much further below that. Yeah, and we'd be targeting closer to that range. So that's kind of what we're looking for with structures here, is that this structure was a head and shoulders. And I'm actually going to mark this in purple. Even though that may not look so great here, I'm going to mark it in purple just so that we can properly see it. But that way we properly see this as the selling structure that it was. And the potential here, again, is that there's this bull structure building in between these two bearish structures. We need to make sure that's not the case. And as long as that's not the case, then our downside's massive. Okay, but we have to be sure that this isn't what is happening. Okay, so that's the entirety of the day. That's 100% what you're looking um, for both the upside and downside. Now, with these levels, it is important to remember that the 5 mile is at the 655.37. Okay. We expected the upper bounds and the lower bounds of the 5 mile being tested today, which is roughly that $1 to $2 above and below the actual 5 mile level. So that's basically telling us we should be seeing this 657.30-ish range, and that we should see that 653.30-ish range. Well, the low of the day, we saw 651. And so far the high of the day, even though that's kind of where it opened at, is actually at that 657.50. Okay, so if we can test the upper bounds today, that's going to give us a full 5 mile test after the 20 mile rejection. So after that 20 mile rejection, with this 5 mile being retested, this opens up the 20 mile again. or this opens up, pushing down to the 10 mile. Okay, and that's really what the rest of the trades for today are going to look like, is we should be gravitating towards one of those levels. Okay. Should we have some massive sell down? Um, Not yet. I think that if we get the bad news with the conflict in Iran that I'm expecting us to get later today, then maybe we can see that gap filled during the after hours um, slash overnight. But so far on SPY, that's what we're looking for, is whether we take the 20 mile, the 5 mile, or head back to the 10 mile. So let me go ahead and look at the VVIX one last time. I want to set this 5 minutes. Yeah, we have potentially not only that head and shoulders, but also this first cup. I can actually draw it. So hard to draw with a broken hand. Okay, that's supposed to be a cup, not a circle. Um, but assuming we see our volatility push into the lower Bollinger, like it's, highly, highly, highly alluding to, then we will be closing that cup to the downside, seeing buying within the SPY and, tech and everything else. However, um, we're starting to get within that time period to start seeing another 20 mod test within the VVIX. Um, has not been a full 20 iterations of the 5 minute time frame candle. However, it's starting to get to that point, so we can start to see this curl back up as we start seeing the 20 mil pulling downward, and we can see a little bit of consolidation in there prior to either the major push upward or pull downward in volatility. So on SPY, have not hit the 50 or the 657.02 again yet, but it's looking extremely, extremely, extremely likely, even on the 1 minute time frame. Hide some of this drawing so we're not blinded. But even on the 1 minute time frame here, with this a bit of reprieve from the upper Bollinger, this does create the conditions where it can pull right back up into that upper Bollinger. So not entirely done with the buying, but we are at a very, very key level, okay? Because remember, if we do not push up, hold on, to properly grab that. If we do not push up and close this cup all the way towards essentially this 657 and 657.78 range. So let's just call it 657.80. Um, we don't see that closing and slightly above that to show that this is a cup that's completed with a bearish structure building on top of it, then this is actually forming that head and shoulder or that inverse cup and handle. Really hard to draw, I apologize. But this would be that larger inverse cup, building that bullish structure at the bottom to give us our upside to once again give us the downside to push further downward. So hopefully the thesis of the day is laid out. It's really fairly cut and dry here. Either we're going to take this yellow range and complete this cup, start building structure off of that, or we're going to be seeing a major rejection. Okay, that major rejection should be building bearish structure, some form of head and shoulders, something to tell us that we're going to be heading downward. From that downward structure, we should be seeing the low of the day, that 651 level taken back out. And from that 651, we can start looking at the 10 mile, which It was at the 649 something, 649.80, so basically the 650 range. So quite a bit of movement to be had today. Now, from the upside perspective, which this is something many aren't going to really expect, our upside here is actually very, very little. The reason why it's very little is because what support do we have above us? Nothing. Um, we have no supports above us. The support above us is the 200-day moving average, which that's a long trend support. That's not something you test as a level and reject to the downside so much. You can have that happen, but that's not really what you look for out of the 200 mile. And then we had the 50 mile, which is at the 673. So I don't think we're getting, roughly $17 of upside today. Um, so what that means is that this upside's really starting to taper out here. Um, we're starting to shoot into the air without anything to grab onto. Whereas everything below us is set up. We have all of our moving averages, we have our lower Bollinger, they're all within range to be tested and hit. So the downside being pushed here is looking extremely, extremely likely. And from that downside, again, it would be rejecting pretty much all the way down to the 630 range um, over the period of, roughly the next week and a half. So today is a very, very key day. Um, what's going on over the next few minutes with this yellow level, which I'm going to delete this box for a moment and hide the moving averages to really show this very, very clearly. But if this box is taken, then we can start looking upward towards the day. This box is not taken, we have nothing but downside. So yeah, that's really the thesis of the day. Um, that's really kind of the stream for the day. I do apologize, I'm kind of just fading out. I'm really exhausted. My hand's in a lot of pain right now. Um, and really I'm just waiting to set up longer positions off of this point. I'm not really wanting to take any further 0 DTs into today. There can be a potential for a very, very large 0 DT put to the downside. Um, but if you're going to take that, you want to make sure you see a massive push into the VVIX to the upside. Okay. You want to be seeing your VVIX pulling back up towards that 119, 120 plus range. Um, Without that, I would be very, very, very concerned about taking a 0 DTE short. Even though I might be bearish on the day, this yellow box can be very, very contentious, and it's really not a large area to decide whether the market's going to be bullish or bearish. So, um, not a lot of room here to make some major decisions. So, yeah, you're very welcome, everybody, and thank you all for tuning in. I always appreciate it. Um, I know I haven't been able to post videos very much recently, um, but I'm gonna try to work on that. I've just been struggling a lot with what's been going on with my hand and everything. I've just been absolutely exhausted. So, okay, everybody, I'm gonna go ahead and end the stream here. Hopefully, you all were able to take a couple few solid trades today. Um, I personally took those puts in the open, and then we took those calls. Both of those did very, very well. I wish we were able to um, take puts back to the downside, but I'm just not going to be able to last for that. So, um, not that the room's not there. Again, I think that there is plenty of downside today. So, if you're able to capitalize on that, definitely try to. But with that, have a great day, everybody, and I will be streaming tomorrow because tomorrow is Wednesday. I will not be streaming Thursday. I will be trying to stream Friday, but I can't guarantee that just yet. But I will let you all know come tomorrow's stream. It really depends on if my wife is able to help me get ready in the morning on Friday or not, because again, with my hand the way it is, I pretty much have to rely on her. So I have to know what time she's working and everything at that time. So can't promise the Friday stream just yet, but I will let you all know very soon. So um I look forward to seeing you all tomorrow morning. If not, then I'll be seeing you in a video tonight. But I will be seeing or I will be doing tomorrow's stream regardless. So okay, enough rambling out of me. Take care, everybody. Have a good day. Thank you for the stream and have a good one.